Walking Dead has never pulled punches when it comes to killing off characters. In this video, we'll break down some of the worst and most gruesome deaths in the whole show. So let's get into it. Noah. If you've ever been afraid to see what a human face looks like when its owner is literally being ripped apart, Noah's death is your nightmare come to life. And trapped in a revolving door during what should have been a routine supply run, Noah gets royally screwed when the cowardly Nicholas panics and leaves Noah hanging, creates enough space for walkers to grab him before Glenn's able to save him. What makes this death particularly awful is how we experience it through Glenn's eyes. Pinned just inches away behind glass, Glenn can only watch helplessly as his young friend gets pulled into a hungry mob who snacks on him until they rip his face apart by tearing off his cheek. He was just a kid, one who always tried to do the right thing and risked his life to save Beth. The camera doesn't cut away either. We see everything as walkers tear into him while his screams echo until the scene finally ends. His final words, "Don't let go," as GE begs for Glenn to save him, "Stay with us." A haunting reminder of Nicholas's complete cowardice. Many consider it the most hellish and gruesome death in the entire series, and for good reason, since you simply can't unsee Noah's face being torn apart in horrifying detail. Glenn Rhee. If Noah's death was the goriest, Glenn's was the one that broke our collective souls the most. After surviving countless near-death experiences since Season 1, including one halfway through the season leading up to this scene, Glenn finally meets his end in the infamous Season 7 premiere as Negan's second victim. The first blow from Lucille is already devastating, but somehow, Glenn struggles to stay alive. What we see next became one of the most controversial images in television history. Glenn with his eye literally popped out of its socket, dangling against his bloodied face as he barely manages to keep breathing. In that horrifying state, he somehow manages to stammer his final words to his pregnant wife, "Maggie, I'll find you." Something he always managed to do, no matter what hardship separated them. Then Negan continues swinging until Glenn's head is nothing but a mushy mess, his body still twitching as his closest friends watch in absolute despair, and his wife breaks down. The death was so graphic and emotionally devastating that it triggered massive viewer outrage, especially since the poor guy had barely avoided being torn apart like Noah in previous episodes, with fans being faked out by his death. Glenn had been our constant optimist, a living reminder of the morals set up by Dale and Herschel, and watching him die so violently in front of Maggie was unbearable and deeply depressing. Lori Grimes. Long before Negan ever swung his bat, The Walking Dead delivered one of its earliest gut punches with Lori's insane death. Trapped in a prison boiler room in the middle of a walker attack, Lori goes into labor at the worst possible moment. With no medical supplies, Maggie performs an emergency C-section using nothing but a dirty knife while Lori lies on cold concrete. Fully aware this makeshift surgery will kill her, Lori makes the ultimate maternal sacrifice. She delivers a tearful goodbye to young Carl, telling him to stay strong and good in this broken, awful world. Maggie cuts into her abdomen and pulls out baby Judith as Lori bleeds out. What follows is even more traumatic, though. Carl insists on shooting his own mother in the head before she can reanimate. When Rick discovers what happened, his breakdown becomes one of the rawest displays of grief ever filmed. But then somehow, it gets even worse. Rick searches for his wife's body, trying to say a final goodbye that he failed to when she was alive, only to find it missing, with a huge and bloated zombie nearby. Her remains were horrifically eaten, and no part of her remained in this world. The horror of Lori's death wasn't about the insane gore, but emotional punches to the gut, too. A mother sacrifices her life for her child, a 12-year-old boy does the unthinkable, and a husband crumbles in sorrow as he realizes there's nothing left of the woman he loved most. Herschel Green. Old Man Herschel's death stands as both savage and heartbreaking, a moment that marked a huge turning point for the series. When the governor storms the prison, he takes our beloved moral compass hostage, holding Michonne's katana to his neck and threatening Rick to leave the prison or suffer a major loss. What makes this death particularly tragic is the false hope. Rick attempts to negotiate peace, making a heartfelt appeal that seems to be working. Herschel even smiles, believing peace might prevail, and is proud of Rick for trying to find a middle ground. Then the governor, who is upset by his people finding Rick agreeable, coldly mutters, "Liar," and swings the katana, partially severing Herschel's neck in one sudden slash. Gunfire erupts as a battle begins, with the prison survivors shocked and disgusted by the brutal strike, but the governor continues hacking at Herschel's neck on the ground, completing the execution as both Rick and Herschel's daughters scream in horror. Herschel had been the group's strong conscience, a gentle father figure who offered wisdom and hope to everybody, from his son-in-law Glenn to Rick, and even strangers he met along the way. Seeing him murdered so barbarically, smiling one moment and then gone in a spurt of blood the next, was not just surprising but also tragic. Even Governor actor David Morrissey admitted the scene brought a lot of tears on set. After that horrifying beheading, things only got darker for our survivors. But at least one character managed to choose her own fate. Sasha Williams. Some deaths are horrifying because of sheer brutality, but Sasha stands out for her heroic choice. After being captured by Negan, she refuses to be used as a pawn against her friends. Instead, she takes a poison pill provided by Eugene, choosing suicide on her own terms. The sequence is very intense, but in a much different way than we're used to. She's inside a coffin in pure darkness, decides to listen to music and reflect on memories as the poison takes effect. By the time Negan dramatically opens the coffin, she has already died and reanimated. In one of the show's most epic twists, zombie Sasha lunges out at an unsuspecting Negan, her jaws snapping for his face. She doesn't manage to kill him, but her surprise attack throws the Saviors into chaos and gives her friends a fighting chance at keeping their lives. For fans, Sasha's end was bittersweet and heroic. It hurt to lose her, but she went out on her own terms, making sure it meant something. Speaking of shocking deaths that left viewers in tears, nothing could prepare us for what happened to a certain blonde singer. Beth Green. Beth's death delivered one of the show's biggest whiplashes. After enduring captivity at Grady Memorial Hospital and going through hell thanks to its officers, Beth is on the verge of freedom when everything goes horribly wrong. Rick's group arranges a tense but successful prisoner exchange. We actually see Beth reunited with her friends in the hallway. Weapons lowered, danger apparently past. But when Don insists that Noah return to the hospital, Beth reaches her breaking point, knowing he'll endure endless abuse and suffering. She steps forward and stabs Don with scissors she had hidden in her cast. It's not a killing blow, more of a symbolic act of defiance, but Dawn's reflex is instant. She fires her gun directly into Beth's head at point-blank range, ending her story forever. The aftermath shows Daryl carrying Beth's body outside, tears in his eyes, just as Maggie arrives, excited to reunite with what was meant to be her freed sister. The sight of Beth's lifeless body causes Maggie to collapse, screaming in agony after losing the last blood relative she had in the world. In just a few seconds, we go from hopeful relief to horrific tragedy. For everyone involved, losing Beth after coming so close to saving her was almost too much to bear. For fans, this moment ranks among the series' saddest. It was so abrupt and cruel that it left many in tears. Carl Grimes. Carl's death isn't the worst because of its brutality or goriness, but instead because of how poorly written it was, as well as what a beloved character he was. Carl was somebody we saw grow up, starting out as a naive kid in season 1 and developing into a brave young man who was almost ready to become a leader at the time of his death. But unfortunately, all of that potential was stripped away from us when he suffered one of the most basic deaths, being bitten during a simple hand-to-hand fight scene. We got some form of closure with his letters and the fact that his legacy was passed down to Judith, but it's still one of the most gut-wrenching and disappointing deaths in the series. Tyrese Williams. Tyrese's death wasn't as gore-filled as others, but its psychological horror made it unique and memorable. Shortly after Beth's loss, the gentle giant meets his end when bitten on the arm by Noah's reanimated little brother in their abandoned house. What follows is an episode-long fever dream, as Tyrese bleeds out. Delirious from blood loss, he hallucinates haunting visions of people from his past. Some offer comfort, like Bob, Beth, and the children from the prison who appear with gentle support. Others, like the governor and Martin, torment him, representing his guilt and doubt over his actions in life. These phantoms whisper and argue with Tyrese, forcing him to confront his regrets. Meanwhile, his friends arrive and desperately try to save him. They even amputate his bitten arm, but it's too late. He's been bleeding out for too long and eventually passes away as they drive home. This death stands out from others because Tyrese doesn't go quickly. He suffers emotionally and physically, fighting for his soul in a feverish haze, while also trying to resist walkers attacking him. By the time his body is being carried to his grave, viewers are emotionally exhausted, especially since he died shortly after Beth. Just when you thought the show couldn't get crazier, Season 7 arrived with a baseball bat and a thirst for blood. Abraham Ford. Though overshadowed by Glenn's demise in the same scenes, Abraham's death was horrible in its own right. As the first victim of Negan's deadly lineup, Abraham faced his end with the kind of courage we expect from his badass ex-military persona. When Negan's eeny, meeny, miny, mo lands on him, Abraham flashes a small peace sign to Sash, a final gesture of love to comfort her in the hardship they're enduring. The bat comes down with a sickening thud. The blow cracks his skull, but incredibly, the tough soldier raises his head again, blood streaming down his face. In classic Abraham fashion, he uses his final breath for defiance. "Suck my nuts," he growls at Negan. It's darkly humorous and perfectly in character, but of course, it only prompts Negan to hit him again and again, smashing Abraham's head into a bloody pulp while everyone watches on in horror. The savagery of the act, and forcing Sasha and Rosita, his lovers, to witness it, makes this death incredibly difficult to watch. Abraham was a beloved protector with a big heart beneath his bravado, even if it took a while for the group to come around to him. For longtime fans, there was some small consolation that he went out the way he lived, unwilling to accept defeat and being full of wit. The Anderson family. Talk about a family outing gone wrong. The domino effect that wiped out Jesse, Sam, and Ron Anderson in a matter of minutes ranks among the show's most fast-paced sequences of loss and betrayal. During a massive Walker invasion of Alexandria, Rick leads his son Carl, new girlfriend Jessie, and her 2 sons through the herd by covering themselves in Walker guts. Everything's working until little Sam becomes overwhelmed by fear. Surrounded by groaning walkers, he begins to whimper and call for his mom. Sam panics and stops moving, shattering their illusion of safety. Instantly, walkers swarm him and start tearing him apart while Jessie watches in horror. Her maternal instinct kicks in, and she screams for her child, blowing their cover too. In a nightmarish scene, mother and son are devoured side by side as she tries to save him. Jessie refuses to let go of Carl's hand even as she's pulled into the herd, forcing Rick to chop off her hand with his axe to save his son. But the horror show isn't over just yet. Ron witnesses his mother and brother being killed, and after blaming Rick for his family's problems for so long up to this point, he turns his gun toward Rick in a rage. Before he can shoot, Michonne impales him with her katana. As Ron falls, his gun goes off, with the stray bullet catching Carl in the eye. In just a few moments, all 3 Andersons are dead or dying, and Carl is grievously injured and in desperate need of medical intervention. This was The Walking Dead at its most ruthless, sparing no one, not even children, from the horrors of the undead. Spencer Monroe. Even seemingly minor characters met some of the show's worst ends. Spencer's death combined poetic justice with pure gore. The son of Alexandria's former leader always remained in the background, critiquing Rick but unwilling to do anything about it. When he's given the opportunity, with Rick out on business, Spencer approaches Negan with a smile, offering whiskey and suggesting he could replace Rick as leader over a game of pool. Negan sees through Spencer's scheme. In a tense exchange, he calls out Spencer's cowardice. "You want to take over? Why not just kill Rick yourself?" "You know what I'm thinking? It's because you got no guts." With that last phrase hanging in the air, Negan suddenly plunges a knife into Spencer's abdomen, slicing him open savagely. The attack is so swift that for a second no one moves. Then Spencer's stomach opens, and his intestines spill onto the pavement. Negan joyfully says, "How embarrassing, there they are. They were inside you the whole time. You did have guts." The scene is shockingly graphic, with a heap of bloody entrails thrown onto the street in broad daylight. While Spencer wasn't the most beloved character, and far from it actually, his end was memorable for its shock value, and Negan's cold-blooded performance. So these have been the worst deaths in the history of The Walking Dead. What do you think of our picks? Are there any you think we missed? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to see more The Walking Dead content, click the video on screen now.